We will start out with a discussion. Actually, what is on the agenda about the helicopter law is a misnomer, because if I understand correctly, Charlie, there is no special use permit possibility for a law.
There's no special use permit process to fly an aircraft in the town of Webster, that's correct. Or not to fly to land or take off in the town of Webster, that's correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess from a layman term, and this is just, I want to just explain semantically, if somebody wants to put a shed in their conservation easement, they can apply for a special use permit.
That would be a license agreement.
Okay, give me a special use permit. Come
Well,
on, help
special
me
use
out here.
permits are those special uses that are delineated in the town code,
Okay,
as opposed to a use variance. There are certain uses that are not permitted, and that the only way to get that use is to get a variance. The difference between a variance and a special use is a variance runs with the land, so that once you get that use variance, the entire, or not the entire, but you basically have that right forever until the use ceases.
I got you.
Okay? But a special permit is really to the person. So a special permit process would go to that particular individual.
okay. And by the way, John, these 2 minutes won't count against your 15, okay? I'm not going to short you, all right? But I think the importance of this is to understand that in layman terms, there is a law in the town of Webster that precludes the landing and taking off of a helicopter.
Chapter 76 of the town.
There you go. And there is no path to have a special use permit to do that based on this law. You would have to either amend the law if you were going to land in the town and take off, or you would have to have the law changed or gotten rid of.
If you want to do it lawfully and legally, yes.
Well, we would.
I'm just being specific here. Yeah.
I would like to think we would pursue things. Now, remember, as I said before, this is a workshop, free-flowing conversation. They're supposed to be fun. Mr. Kashani.
Yes.
You have a presentation to give to the board and to the people in the audience. So it's 5:33. You don't lose 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Supervisor Flaherty, members of the board. My name is John Kashani, and we just have a very short slide presentation, and thank you for the opportunity. You want me to be there? Okay. Can I break? I'm very fond of my helicopter, so I kind of like to keep them close by. Okay, I'm sorry. Does this work okay?
Yes.
Still got my 15 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. So we have a slide presentation, and without taking any more time, I'd like to start out with the purpose, I hope tonight, is to simply ask what the purpose of the Webster Aviation Law actually is. Thank you. And these are some posts cited by Supervisor Ron Nesbitt just within the last couple of weeks, and I really didn't want to go there, but, you know, this kind of preempted, you know, my story to come in here, and I'm not going to read these. I'm sure many of you folks already have read them, but clearly, there's been a pattern to mislead, misinform, use fear-mongering tactics to manipulate and deceive the residents of the town of Webster and this board. That's all I'll say about that. Next page, please. This is a picture, and I want to state a quote from April 17th, 2008, when former Supervisor Nesbitt was quoted in the Democrat and Chronicle stating, "Heaven forbid, but if something would happen in a residential neighborhood with all that jet fuel, a neighborhood could be lost in minutes." I point out this is a 18-wheeler rolled over, landed in a residential yard. That 18-wheeler can weigh as much as 80,000 pounds with a full load. It carries up to 400 gallons of fuel. Did a little calculation and double-checked it more than once. At a low number, we have 1.6 million gallons of fuel that travel along flammable, explosive fuel that travel along Route 104 daily. In comparison, this aviation law is really about what happens when a helicopter, who has a right to fly in the airspace, comes with 0 airspeed and sets down 1 foot. Because that's what this issue is. It's the issue of, can the helicopter set down 1 foot on the owner's private property? I think I'm good with that, thank you. Okay, got my notes over here. My goodness, this is the most mystical part of the aviation law, or as it's been referred to, the helicopter law. This is an ultralight. There's an ad in Craigslist I just printed out a couple of weeks ago. I just want to point out the greatest single threat to general aviation is an ultralight. We in our town made a special carve-out, not quite sure why, but we decided this was okay to take off and land. Now let me point out a couple of things. This aircraft, no license required. You can buy them on Craigslist. You don't have to have a certified mechanic maintain something like that. In fact, you can build it at home, or you can have your friend build it at home. Or you can buy it and take it apart and modify it, put it back together again, and you can fly it over the town of Webster, and you're encouraged in the Webster helicopter law to take off and land that. It's been stated that we don't want landing strips in Webster. Got the quotes. I land in a 10-foot by 10-foot piece of property. I don't require 890 lineal feet that currently has in the town of Webster. These are required to have no radio, no transponder, no ASB. Nobody knows where they are. Yet we're taking off and we're landing, and we're saying this is good. But they can't talk with general aviation. Now there's numerous airplanes and helicopters and commercial traffic that fly over Webster every day. The greatest threat is that thing. Because when that collides with a general aviation aircraft who's abiding by all the rules, we're going to look pretty silly, stating that that was a good idea. I'll finish with that last bullet. You have 6 times greater chance of death in that than any general aviation. Thank you. Move on. I got only a few minutes left, I'm afraid. AOPA is the Aircraft Owner and Pilots Association. I've been a member for almost 20 years. It's the largest aviation organization in the world. The Democrat Chronicle interviewed Chris Dancy back in 2008. Said, what do you think about the helicopter law? His statement was, I'm aware of 4, and now 5 towns that have created such a law since Webster was the Fed, that has actually created such a law to zone out the landing of a private helicopter. Now, folks, we have 35,000 towns and cities in this country. 5 decided we have to make a law. The others have left it up to the FAA, because the FAA very clearly is the jurisdictional body that determines the safe and efficient use of airspace as it pertains to the safety of people on the ground and of property on the ground when it comes to landing. The FAA does this. The other 4,995 other towns realize the FAA's got a handle on this. Are there going to be a lot of sites ever approved in Webster to land an aircraft? Highly unlikely. But we'll get to that later. Thank you, Chris. You can move. Just real briefly, this was just taken a couple of years ago. This is an airplane landing on Irondequoit Bay, as they routinely do. The point is that there's families out here, there's snowmobilers, there's ice fishermen, ice skaters, and it just goes on. Thanks. This is an interesting one. Does anybody know where this is? Anybody? No? Where? So this is the Sandbar Park. Come on, we gave it away over here. This is Webster property. These routinely land within the boundaries of the town of Webster. Completely illegal based on the law. The helicopter law, or Article 76, or whichever you want to call it. Not a whole lot to say about that other than you're looking at families having dinner. You're looking at revolving propellers, more noise than any helicopter makes, a seaplane can make. There's other boaters, there's fishermen, there's jet skis, there's water skiers. This is public property. See, this is where the citizens of Webster like to go. They like to go to the bay. Hundreds every weekend are on the bay. And these are landing right next to them. Thank you, Chris. We could probably move on. Actually, one more point I want to make about that. That's okay, you can move on, but my point is, I've actually contacted the Monroe County Sheriffs, the New York State Police, contacted the U.S. Coast Guard, just to satisfy my own curiosity to ask, because all these people, agencies, patrol Arundequoit Bay and the surface of Arundequoit Bay. Would you know that not one is aware of the Webster law? And not one has ever been approached by anyone in Webster to say, if you see that happen, airplane land, I've always been kind of tried to be quiet about it because some of these people are my friends, but that nobody has ever been asked or told. You got to violate them. You got to bring them to court, and you got to threaten 5 years in prison. That's the law. Thank you, Chris. You already moved forward. I'm going to give everybody a copy of this presentation. There's not a whole lot to explain on this, other than these are just a few of things, accidental deaths. Some of them the town could have control over, like dog bites, 5 years, 175. Swing sets, and that's 90, it's not sure after a while. There's things, pools. We give pool permits. Everybody loves a pool. But pools kill thousands of people. And I don't know the statistic here, I should. 3,615, that's just pools. Drowning is another bigger issue. But we have accidents, and we are sworn to oath to protect our citizens. Eventually I'm going to ask where this applies. Thank you, Chris. You can move on. Thank you. Oh, I'm always jumping forward. My last point on that chart, you're going to get a copy. There's 0 within 5 years. People that have been killed by a helicopter coming out of the sky and killing them in 5 years. Just like all those, you double them in 10 years. You triple them in 15 years. You can go back 35 years, there's not a soul in the United States of America that has been killed by an by a helicopter, coming out of the sky and killing them. But yet we have spent so many numerous resources in our town for this. But it hasn't happened. But the fear has been out there. Clearly. Read the blogs. Thank you, Chris. You move forward. This is my backyard. A couple of the board members, maybe everyone, has been there to my backyard. A couple of questions. We showed where people are having dinner at a town park. People that are ice fishing. We showed all kinds of public surroundings where aircrafts land. Take a look at this. Here's me. Come in, come over here, land in this little itty-bitty spot right here, 80 feet away from my house. I take off, I turn, I go over here. I fly over no Webster properties, nor am I forced to fly over any Webster properties other than my own. Rather unique position to be in. The question is, given some of the other slides, where's the threat? Obviously, the property is undeniably well maintained. Taxes are paid. Another note, this is probably the noisiest parcel of land in the town of Webster. The noisiest. And that was determined by Gary Kleist several years ago when he was asked to get some noise decibels. I've included some of the noise decibels, will be in the packet. But the noise in my property exceed the allowable noise decibel in the town of Webster. That's what I hear every day. I'm not sure if anybody else has a house or a property or a use of their property where the noise decibel exceeds the allowable Webster decibel, but I do. Councilman Dean, we can go to this later, but you know this property. You worked there as a teenager. Can you describe what that property was years ago?
It was a landfill.
Okay, thank you. And I've maintained this landfill. And on a yearly basis, I pull dozens of tires that come up out of the ground. Concrete slabs that were dumped there. They used to be in the roads, I guess. I maintain that. I'm not sure whose responsibility it is to maintain a Webster former dump, but it's a lot of maintenance. And I do it, and it's been of no burden to the town. Thank you, Chris. You can move. This is a real nice map, and I think the couple points I want to make, I really don't have any on here, but this is the kind of thing that the FAA would look at, and probably sort of did look at when they gave me the approval back in 2004, 2 years before there was a aviation law or helicopter law. And what they would look at is proximity to where this would take off and land. And do they have free areas that they can use to come in and out of? Find another site like that in Webster, because all the yellow, which is hundreds, including the bay, which then gets into thousands of acres of open area that I can utilize to be safe to me and my aircraft, but more importantly, to people and property on the ground. In addition to this, the blue spot is where I live, and that's where I have a hangar for my helicopter. I made the effort to talk to some of the neighbors whom are all friendly and all supportive and have no issue with a helicopter landing on my FAA-approved site, former town landfill. And that's all. You can move forward, please. I've included the signatures from the petition from the neighbors, clearly the ones that have the green home sites. Thank you, Chris. Years ago, I was asked to come into the town. I said, what should I do? And he said, well, just bring some neighbor letters and bring some supporting letters. Maybe anything from the town would be good. So I said, okay, I'll go ahead and do that. And I talked to each of these people. Ironically, they were all spoken to before there was ever a controversy. And I said, yeah, I'm John Kashani. I have a helicopter. I'd like to be friendly. I'd like to continue to be a member of the community, and I'd like to give back whenever possible. I have this helicopter. Chief of Police, if you could ever use it, I'm not a policeman. I don't even know how to be a police, but I know how to fly a helicopter. And by the way, side note, I'm not an amateur. I'm a commercial pilot. And I've been written in the paper as an amateur pilot by former supervisor to the point where it can't get more hurtful. I'm a commercial pilot. Each of these have all, we even got Joey Herbst here stating, we've already used Mr. Kashani's generous offer for something that benefited the town. Thank you, Joey, 20 years later. And thank you, I think we can move on from that. Just here, you'll get a copy of this. This is a copy of my FAA-approved heliport. This is a copy of my license. Doesn't say amateur, it says commercial pilot. And we can go on and on about that sort of thing, but I think everybody understands. So lastly, I just simply want to end by asking, what was the true purpose? Isn't that what we started in the beginning? What was the true purpose of the Webster Aviation Law? Was it truly intended to protect the citizens of the town of Webster? And if so, can anybody on this board, anybody please, tell me how that law, when the helicopter can fly, when the helicopter can hover, and the helicopter can be a foot off of the ground, and it can be completely legal, what did the law do at zero speed that somehow causes me to be in such jeopardy by setting down that foot? I asked the board, and I'm done with my presentation, so.
John, I got to tell you, I'm impressed, having known you for many years, being in the mortgage business and development. 17 minutes. I'm impressed, because I didn't know if you could do it that quick.
I owe that to Chris, who made this for
Nicely
me
done.
and said, John, you're never gonna make it.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that that presentation will be available for the board members. And thank you for coming in and giving that impassioned presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
And I'd like to hand out these to the board. I also didn't have it in the presentation, if I could have another half minute. In the blog by former supervisor, there was a statement that said the law was made because of the complaints that people had for a helicopter landing on Sundance Trail. And remember, years ago was said, get some letters from your neighbors. You know, come on in, just get some letters from your neighbors. I have letters from the 5 closest neighbors. I have pictures of their houses, and ironically, Google Earth was taking pictures the day my helicopter was in my backyard. Take a look at that helicopter. It looks tinier than the car that's out here. Can anybody look at that and say, how could that take out a whole neighborhood? The fear-mongering statement, God forbid. So I have this, it wasn't part of the presentation, and I have the presentation, and I thank you all very much for the opportunity to come here tonight.
Thanks,
you.
Ben.
Thanks, John.
And
Thank you.
I don't know if it was your desired intent, but you know what caught my eye about this is that maybe the board needs to look, what are those things called, the planes?
Seaplanes.
What are they called?
Seaplanes.
No, not those.
The ultralights.
Ultralights!
Yeah.
I thought that was beer that had less calories and carbs, Barry.
Well, that's because you're a beer drinker.
That's interesting. I hope you don't, that's what I took away, is that we might not want those
I
in
have
town,
very
but
good
anyway.
friends
Anyway.
in the FAA that are furious about this type of aircraft because they can't control it. They can't regulate it.
Yeah.
And they do pose a great threat. The most dangerous aircraft known to man has been looked at by Webster as special cargo. This is good. You can take off and land. What causes that? It's not good sense.
Well, and
It's
you know
not
what, and
statistics.
John, I appreciate, I will say this,
I'm going over it.
it's why there's a law that's from 2004, there's a lot of things we're looking at in town saying codes and whatever, should they be augmented and whatever, and that ultralight thing, that catches my attention. And that's the way government works, is you change things when it doesn't make sense anymore. I don't like an ultralight from the sounds of it.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
And John, you never looked as good with that tie on, I gotta tell you.
I'm
You know.
going to keep it.
Thanks, John.